Albert Einstein had one portrait hanging in his office. It was the portrait of Michael Faraday, who introduced us to how to get electricity from, let's say, for instance, the wires outside of our house into our house so that you can actually operate your toaster in the morning. He was that guy. Einstein was so taken by this because of Faraday's basic knowledge of science. But do you know where Faraday got his understanding? Faraday was a Christian. In fact, when Faraday died, it was discovered that his most thumbed through book in the Bible was the book of Job, all about God's creation. I would like to suggest to us in this particular episode about why what we believe actually matters in daily life. I would like to suggest this idea coming right out of Genesis 1:1, that in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And when the Hebrews said heavens and the earth, they meant everything. Everything from A to Z. There was nothing left out. What's important about that is that in our daily lives, there has this tendency to be a division between what some people refer to as secular and what others would say is sacred. And so some would suggest that some things belong to God and some things are just neutral. Well, according to Genesis, there is nothing neutral. If God created all things, there are no brute facts. They don't just simply exist. They are given to us by God. They are sustained by God, and He will bring them all into final culmination. And so instead of seeing the Greek view of a divide between secular and sacred, we need to see a Hebraic view which emphasized all things were sacred. And because of this view, it now informs our whole of life. We go through life thinking to ourselves, not only are we concerned about the C-suite of executive offices, but we are also concerned about the people who pick up our trash and where that trash goes, or the bartender who listens to the stories of people at the bar, or the homemaker who takes care of the home, or the person who is going out and doing carpentry work to facilitate housing. All of those things are under the jurisdiction of God, and therefore all things are sacred. One of my favorite scientists was a man by the name of Johannes Kepler. Johannes Kepler came up with what was then called the third law of planetary motion. And the third law of planetary motion simply means that he understood why the planets operated in the way that they did. And when he discovered the third law of planetary motion, immediately prayed. That was his response to discovering this law of God. He also said this, that he considered himself to be a priest of the Most High God in the book of God's creation. So when we think about what we have learned in the past, about the Harvard Crest and how the three books of God's Word, World, and Logic are all ours to understand the world around us, we now understand and think differently about a sacred world, that all things are God's. And so when we encounter our daily lives, we don't think this is separate from how I think as a Christian, but we think all things in life should be thought about from a Christian point of view.